You are listening to TBR Radio presents the Dixie Heritage Show, with your host, the Director of Dixie Heritage, Dr. Ed DeVries.
This week on TBR Radio presents the Dixie Heritage Show, we are going to have our third and final segment of our ongoing conversation with singer-songwriter Mary Fahl. If you remember last week, we ran out of time as Mary began to speak about the importance of feeding the mind and feeding the soul. So we're going to pick up that conversation right where we left it off last week.
Food, it's the other thing I try to encourage people to do too. It's like, if you want to keep the creative juices flowing, you've got to feed your brain. You got to feed your soul with good things. Yeah. You've got to, you have to keep feeding it and feeding it. I mean, when Dylan, let's go back to him, was a young, poor musician in Greenwich Village, I mean, he was sleeping on people's couches, but he was sleeping on people's couches and reading French poets. You know what I mean? Right. Feeding his brain, feeding his soul. You got to keep your mental and emotional and psychic diet well fed.
Talk about feeding the soul. Myself, I'm assuming you're a practicing Catholic. You had mentioned growing up in a Catholic home.
No, I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore. I haven't been for years. My mother still is very, very much, and it really works for her. I mean, my mother is a deep, never pushes it on anybody, but in her, you just know. I mean, it has sustained her through the loss of two children. I had a brother killed in Vietnam and a brother who died at 5. I mean, and my mother was able to endure those things and come out stronger on the other end. She has an incredibly powerful prayer life. Right. I mean, my mother takes credit for anything good that happens to you because she prayed for you.
Okay.
She's completely confident that it was because of her prayers. And but she, at this point, she's very old. She's 100 years old.
Wow.
And my mother is probably in a state of prayer for most of the day.
Wow.
That's what she does. But she's not showy about it. We don't have like religious iconography around the house or anything like that. It's just her thing.
Okay.
That was and that's great. And for me, I would say that the prayer side of things certainly rubbed off on me. I have a bit of a problem with the modern Catholic Church for a number of reasons, and that I really won't bother to go into. It's my personal thing, but I don't happen to like our current Pope, and I don't think he should be sticking his nose in where it doesn't belong.
Well, Pat Buchanan asked of Pope Francis, is the Pope Catholic? He said, it's not a joke anymore. It's now a serious question.
I heard that one, yeah. It's like, you can't use that joke anymore. It doesn't mean that you can't have a relationship with the divine,
Right.
And so I do. My husband does.
Well, the reason I ask you that question is I'm a Baptist.
Yeah.
And so a song like the Ave Maria is not the kind of song that a Baptist would normally be singing.
Oh, that's right. I get it.
And I heard you online, and your YouTube version of Ave Maria only has about 3,000 hits, and we need to get that up a little bit, I think. But I was listening to that, and I sent the link to a friend of mine who is a Russian Orthodox priest in Pennsylvania, and I told him, I said, you've got to listen to this. And he's like, yeah, this is really good. And I told him, I said, I listened to this, and it just feeds my soul.
Yeah, I always forget that, the Catholics have a big segment of Catholicism has a massive devotion to Mary, massive devotion. And my mother has a huge devotion. So I will tell you, when I sang Ave Maria, I sang that for my mother. That was for her and for her devotion. And it's just it's a magnificent song. There's something primal about it. That song speaks to the archetypal mother, the eternal mother, and so that's why it moves people, and it's so beautifully written.
We were talking about writing and creating and so forth a few moments ago. One thing that I'm sure you've experienced, because I know I've experienced it, for every magazine article, for example, that I've sold and that has been published, I probably have 3 that I put out there, but nobody wanted to buy them. And so I'm sure for every song that you've released, you probably have at least a few that you've written that didn't get released.
Oh God, yeah.
Didn't get
Of course. Yeah, no. I
and
mean,
so, I know
at a certain point you have to let that go.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask, because I know at different points in their lives, like Johnny Cash, Bob Dylan, others, would put up, release that music. And so I wondered if you had any plans of doing that, or like you just said, you're just going to let it go.
Oh, I've got stuff in the hopper, things I did. The funny thing is, also the older I get, the more I feel as if I have to put things out. I don't know, just because I feel a compulsion to do it. I told you earlier, I love classical music. It's just because I wasn't trained. I didn't go to a conservatory. I don't have you really can't fit me into any sort of traditional classical vocal range, female vocal range. I really have sort of the range of a male tenor in a lot of ways. I'm not constricted by that world. So I did a record recently, and I think it's one of the best things I've ever done, with John Lissauer. John is a wonderful producer. He produced a lot of the early Leonard Cohen albums, if you like Leonard Cohen. I did a classical record with him, and it's all French songs, and it's done my way, sort of. I would call it sort of the acoustic folk versions of these songs. Ravel and Poulenc and Debussy and Satie, and it was very challenging for me. And I don't sing it in that sort of stiff recital-y way that might put people off who don't typically like classical music. And I also didn't do it in a sort of pop way. Sounds like everything else I do. I mean, it was so much fun, and to have that music just pouring into you while you're making this record, it was just a lovely experience. So I'm going to release that. I don't know who the heck's going to buy that, because I don't know if my audience is. It is what it is. I wanted to do it. It was a labor of love.
Well, sometimes we just have to do the things that we want to do. I mean, sometimes we just have to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your web browser and type in www.barnesreview.org and discover the Barnes Review magazine. In the Barnes Review, you will read vignettes of man, from the prehistoric to the very recent, from forgotten races and civilizations to first-person accounts of World War II and the late Cold War. There is no more interesting magazine published today, nor a more significant and important subject than real history. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review. You can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review magazine in its print form, or in convenient electronic delivery. Our host has been a subscriber to both formats for years. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review.
So tell us about your website.
Oh, so it's maryfahl.com, and you should probably spell my name, M-A-R-Y-F as in Frank, A-H-L. It's a German spelling. I have, you can see all the dates. I mean, I hope I can start doing shows again. Most of my shows were rescheduled for now. I don't even know. I still have things listed for June. 2 of those are in Michigan, and don't think that state's going to be open again by the end of June. But we'll see. I hope it is. Mm-hmm. And I have shows in Pennsylvania. And so everything was pushed to the fall and rescheduled. My Florida shows were rescheduled. So we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed. I hope everybody gets back to work again. Yeah. I really do. And one of the things I've made a commitment to do once everything opens back up again is, especially since I live in a place like Easton, I really want to make a tremendous effort to support small local businesses. You know, rather than go to the big Starbucks, I'd rather go to the little mom and pop place from now on. And I think everybody should do that. These businesses have to get back up and running again as soon as possible. It's a really important commitment to make.
That is
to
very
spend
good.
a little bit more money and go to that place, because it'll keep small business flowing. And I think we've all realized that things need to be much more localized than they have been. And so that's what I'm going to do, and that's what I would encourage your listeners to do as well.
Well, that's very good advice.
Extra, read all about it.
If you're like me, and I'll bet you are, you like to be on the cutting edge of honest news and accurate information. You like to hear about the latest financial trends and to know what's happening around the world and right here in the United States. The things that can directly impact you, your life, and the life of your family. And if you're like me, you do not rely on the mainstream media to obtain this information because, frankly, you know that you just can't trust them. Fortunately, there is an alternative news outlet with a long-established track record for honesty and integrity, and that is the American Free Press. 26 times a year, the American Free Press newspaper can be delivered to your door, packed with the kind of uncensored news that I know you're going to appreciate. AFP covers the stories and tells the truth that the lamestream media is frankly scared to touch. And AFP offers real, on-the-scene reporting and commentary, the likes of which you will never see in the Washington Post, the New York Times, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, or just about any other lamestream news source that you can think of. If you're ever dissatisfied with your subscription to the American Free Press, their guarantee is that you just drop them an email and they will gladly refund the unused portion of your subscription. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.americanfreepress.net. Once again, www.americanfreepress.net. And find out about the American Free Press. Do it today.
Extra, read all about it.
Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I just didn't ask the question and didn't give you the opportunity?
Oh no, this was a lovely conversation. I think you got to a lot of things. I think you got to the topics that would be interesting for your listenership. You know, I could talk about tons of different things, but you know, I think we got to the essence of what was important. So, and I really appreciate it. It's so nice to hear that people still love that song. You wonder sometimes, like, does any of it matter? And then you realize that something you did really moved someone or entertained them or fed their soul in some way. And that makes me feel, I like to feel useful in this world. You know, I really do. So it makes me feel like what I've done has been useful. So Thank you for that.
For the last hour or so during these past 3 radio shows, you have heard my conversation with Mary Fahl. And after we were done talking on the radio, we just kept talking, even long after the interview was over. Another about 2.5 hours or so of off-air conversation that, of course, I'm not going to share with you. What ended up happening was I called Mary to do the interview, and then the next thing you know, pretty much the entire day had passed, and we realized we were still chatting on the phone. She was just that pleasant of a person to talk to. In fact, it was almost like I was on the phone with my Aunt Dolores. It's kind of a interesting way to describe it to you. But she was just a very pleasant person to get to know and to talk to. Very grateful to Mary for being our guest for these last few weeks. And I just want to say I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. But we do have a little bit of time left in this broadcast. And so what I want to do, we had talked about Mary singing the Ave Maria and about feeding the soul and how just for whatever reason, when I hear her sing that, it feeds my soul. And so before we have our next commercial here, let's listen to Mary sing the Ave Maria.
Grazie a te.
benedictus fructus ventris, ventris tui,
Welcome to the Christendom curriculum. You know, every parent who decides to homeschool wants to secure a great education for their child, while also saving time and money. But these days, many parents have another concern. They also want a homeschool curriculum without all the multiculturalist, politically correct diversity doctrine that's really little more than a thin disguise for an anti-Christian, anti-American, and anti-Western civilization bias. Now there is such a curriculum. The Christendom curriculum gives your children a complete education in Bible, history, literature, and more, focusing on the classic academic skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic. But we also tell the story of Christendom, the story of the Christian nations, especially as Christ's kingdom has been historically manifest in the nations of Europe and America, and we do so without apology. The Christendom curriculum is the only Christian nationalist homeschool program you'll find. We support the right of the European and American peoples to their historic Christian cultures against the globalist leftists who want to destroy those cultures. Not only that, but we provide assigned reading courses for various hot-button subjects in our current culture wars, including feminism, social justice, and cultural Marxism, among others. These reading courses will teach your kids how to survive a social justice warrior attack, how to debate with leftists on social media, how to reform their local churches and communities, and more. We're living in a time of tremendous historical and social change. Christians have the opportunity now to begin building the culture and civilization of the next 1,000 years and beyond. It's an exciting time to be alive. So if you want to help raise the next generation of culture warriors, if you want your children to grow up with a love for Christ's kingdom and for their own nation, while at the same time learning how to defend America and rebuild the West, the easy-to-use Christendom curriculum is for you. Click the Learn More button to get in on the action. And thanks for listening.
Again, going back to Mary and I's previous conversation about how important that it is to feed your mind and to feed your soul, I think that's one of the reasons why the Christendom curriculum is so special, because unlike a lot of academic curriculums and homeschool curriculums that do just feed the mind and that do just feed the brain and that do just convey the facts and the information and the knowledge, this is a curriculum that truly does feed the soul. And that is one of the reasons why my family and I use it in our own homeschooling process right now. It's just a great curriculum, and if you've not yet looked into it and availed yourself to it, go to www.dixieheritage.net, click on the homeschool page, and find out more about the Christendom curriculum. You'll be glad you did. Anyways, Mary decided that since she's not been able to do concerts, especially with all of the coronavirus stuff going on right now, she really misses being able to perform and being able to interact with her fans. But what she did is she recorded a song from her home, and it's that beautiful, beautiful song, Shenandoah.
I learned this when I was a little kid. My dad had this wonderful Joe Stafford record. Joe Stafford was his favorite singer. And she made a record in 1950 of these American folk songs, and it's a beautiful, beautiful record. So I learned this song off that record, and I'm going to sing it for you now. Here we go. Oh, Shenandoah,
Shenandoah, I long to see you. Oh, you rolling river. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to see you. Away, my heart's away, across the wide Missouri. Oh, Valley Green, I am your daughter. Oh, you rolling river, forevermore your faithful daughter. Away, my heart's away, across the wide Missouri. Oh, meadows green that spring embraces. Oh, you rolling river, lo, I have seen 100 places. Away, my heart's away, across the wide Missouri. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to see you. Oh, you rolling river. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to see you. Away, my heart's away, across the wide Missouri. Thanks, everybody.
Hello, I'm Tom Strain, Lieutenant Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. The Confederate flag, Confederate symbols, and the reputation of our Confederate ancestors has come under attack. The Sons of Confederate Veterans is actively fending off our detractors, but there is only so much that we can do. We need your help. Contact your local, state, and national elected politicians and tell them that you will not tolerate these attacks on our heritage. You can also visit scv.org, download an application to join us in our fight to preserve our Southern heritage. Visit scv.org today. If you don't have a Confederate ancestor and you are tired of American history disappearing, you can assist us by becoming a friend of the SCV. Please visit scvheritagedefense.org and make a donation to the Heritage Defense Fund. We hope that you will join us in the fight to defend the Confederate soldiers' good name.
And this is literally all the time we're going to have for this week's TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Show. We do have a few more minutes, but I'm going to cut myself short because what I want to do is I want to leave you just one last time with Mary singing that beautiful song, Going Home.
They say there's a place where dreams have all gone. They never said where, but I think I know. It's miles through the night, just over the dawn, on the road that will take